Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel English Tutorial. I am Rajni Meena, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Government College, Rawatwata. Previous video we discussed about Matthew Arnold early life, his marriage, and today we will discuss about his literary career. In 1852, Arnold published his second volume of poems, Empedocles on Etna and Other Poems. In 1853, he published poems, a new edition, a selection from the two earlier volumes, famously excluding Empedocles on Etna but putting a new poems, Sohrab and Rustam and the Scholar Gypsy. In 1854, poems second series appeared, also a selection. It included the new poem Balder Dead. Arnold was elected professor of poetry at Oxford in 1857, and he was the first in this position to deliver his lectures in English rather than in Latin. He was re-elected in 1862 on translating Homer, 1861, and the initial thoughts that Arnold would transform into culture and anarchy were among the fruits of Oxford lectures. In 1859, he conducted the first of three trips to the continent at the behest of Parliament to study European educational practices. He self-published The Popular Education of France, 1861, the introduction to which was later published under the title Democracy, 1879. In 1865, Matthew Arnold published Essays in Criticism, first series, Essays in Criticism. Second series would not appear until November 1888, shortly after his untimely death. In 1866, he published Thyrsis, that is his elegy to Cloth, who had died in 1861. In his 1867 poem Doverwich depicted a nightmarish bird from which the old religious verities have receded. It is sometimes held up as an elderly, if not the first, example of the modern sensibility. In a famous preface to a selection of the poems of William Wordsworth, Arnold identified a little ironically as a Wordsworthian. The influence of Wordsworth, both in ideas and in diction, is unmistakable in Arnold's best poetry. Arnold's poem Doverwich was included in Ray Bradbury's novel Fahrenheit 451 and is also featured prominently in the novel Saturday by Ian McEwan. It has also been quoted and or alluded to in a variety of other contexts. Henry James wrote that Matthew Arnold's poetry will appeal to those who like their pleasures rare and who like to hear the poet taking breath. In his poetry, he derived not only the subject matter of his narrative poems from traditional or literary sources, and much of the romantic melancholy of his earlier poems from Sinancor's Obermann's Culture and Anarchy Culture and Anarchy, Arnold's major work in social criticism, and one of the few pieces of his prose work currently in print, was published in 1869. Literature and Dogma, Arnold's major work in religious criticism, appeared in 1873. In 1883 and 84, Arnold toured the United States and Canada, delivering lectures on education, democracy, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was elected a foreign honorary member of the American Academy of Art and Sciences in 1883. In 1886, he retired from school inspection and made another trip to America. In addition of poems by Matthew Arnold with an introduction by A.C. Benson and illustration by Henry Obsbert, was published in 900 by John Lane. Literary criticism. Arnold's work as a literary critic began with the 1853 preface to the poems. In it, he attempted to explain his extreme act of self censorship in excluding the dramatic poem Empedocles on Etna, with its emphasis on the importance of subject in poetry, on clearness of arrangement, rigor of development, simplicity of style, learned from the Greeks, and in the strong imprint of Goethe and Wordsworth, may be observed nearby all the essential element in his critical theory. George Watson described the preface written by the 31-year-old Arnold as oddly stiff and graceless when we think of elegance of his later prose. Criticism began to take place in Arnold writings with his appointment in 1857 to the professorship of poetry at Oxford, which he held for two successive terms of 5 years. In 1861, his lectures on translating Homer was published, to be followed in 1862 by Last Words on Translating Homer, both volumes admirable in style and full of striking judgment and suggestive remarks, but builds on rather arbitrary assumptions and reaching no well established conclusion. Especially characteristics both of his defect and his qualities are, on the one hand, Arnold's unconvincing advocacy of English hexameters and his creation of a kind of literary absolute in the grand style, and on the other, his keen feeling of the need for a disinterested and intelligent criticism in England. Although Arnold's poetry received only mixed reviews and attention during his lifetime, his forays into literary criticism were more successful. Arnold is famous for introducing a methodology of literary criticism somewhere between the historicist approach common to many critics at the time and the personal essay. He often moved quickly and easily from literary subject to political and social issues. His essays in criticism 1865 1880 remains a significant influence on critics to this day, and his prefatory essay to that collection, The Function of Criticism at the Present Time is one of the most influential essays written on the role of the critic in identifying and elevating literature, even while admitting the critical power is of lower rank than the creative. Comparing himself to the French liberal essayist Ernest Renan, who sought to inculcate morality in France, Arnold saw his role as in calculating intelligence in England. In one of his most famous essays on the topic, The Study of Poetry, Arnold wrote that without poetry, our science will appear incomplete, and most of what now passes with us for religion and philosophy will be replaced by poetry. He considered the most important criteria used to judge the value of a poem were high truth and high seriousness. By this standard, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales did not merit Arnold's approval. Further, Arnold thought the works that had been proven to possess both high truth and high seriousness, such as those of Shakespeare and Milton, could be used as a basis of comparison to determine the merit of other works of poetry. He also sought for literary criticism to remain disinterested and said that the appreciation should be of the object as it itself in it really is. Next is social criticism. He was led on from literary criticism to a more general critique of the spirit of his age. Between 1867 and 1869, he wrote Culture and Anarchy, famous for the term he popularized for the middle class of English Victorian era population. Philistines, a word which derives its modern culture meaning from him. Culture and Anarchy is also famous for its popularization of the phrase sweetness and light that was first coined by Jonathan Swift. In Culture and Anarchy, Arnold identifies himself as a liberal and a believer in culture and takes up what historian Richard Bellamy calls the broadly Galastonian effort to transform the Liberal Party into a vehicle of political moralism. Arnold viewed with skepticism the plutocratic grasp in socio-economic affairs and engaged the questions which vexed many Victorian liberals on the nature of power and the state's role in more guidance. Arnold vigorously attacked the nonconformist and the arrogance of the great Philistines middle class, the master force in our politics. The Philistines were humdrum people, slave to routine, enemies to light, who believed that England's greatness was due to her material wealth alone and took little interest in culture. Liberal education was essential, and by that Arnold meant a close reading and attachment to the culture classic. Coupled with critical reflection, Arnold saw the experience and reflection of liberalism as naturally leading to the ethical end of renouncement, as evoking the best self to suppress one's ordinary self. Despite his quarrels, Arnold remained a loyal liberal throughout his life, and in 1883 William Gladstone awarded him an annual pension of £250 as a public recognition of his service to the poetry and literature of England. Many subsequent critics, such as Edward Alexander Lenonian Trilling, George Scriba, and Russell Jacobi, has emphasized the liberal character of the Arnold's thought, whose Stuart Jones described Arnold's work as a liberal critique of Victorian liberalism, while Alan S. Kahan places Arnold's critique of the middle class Philistinism, materialism, and mediocrity within the tradition of aristocratic liberalism, as exemplified by liberal thinkers such as John Stuart Mill and Alexis D. Arnold's want of logic and thoroughness of thought, as noted by John M. Robertson in Modern Humanist, was an aspect of the inconsistency of which Arnold was accused. Few of his ideas were his own, and he failed to reconcile the conflicting influences which moved him so strongly. There are four people in special, he once wrote to Cardinal Newman, from whom I am conscious of having learned a very different thing from merely receiving a strong impression. Learned habits, methods, ruling ideas, which are constantly with me, and the four are Goethe, Wordsworth, Sainte Beuve, and yourself. Dr. Arnold must be added. The son's fundamental likeness to the father was early pointed out by Swinburne, and was later arrested by Matthew Arnold's grandson. Mr. Arnold, Beatrice, and others such as Stephen Coligny suggest that much of the criticism aimed at Arnold is based on a convenient parody of what he is supposed to have stood for, rather than the genuine article. Journalist Next, journalistic criticism. In 1887, Arnold was credited with coining the phrase "new journalism", a term that went on to define an entire genre of newspaper history, particularly Lord Northcliffe's turn of the century press empire. However, at the time, the target of the Arnold irritation was not Northcliffe, but the sensational journalism of Pall Mall Gazette editor W. T. Stead. Arnold had enjoyed a long and mutually beneficial association with the Pall Mall Gazette since its inception in 1865 as an occasional contributor. He had formed a particular friendship with its first editor, Frederick Greenwood, and a close acquaintance with its second, John Morley. But he strongly disapproved of muckraking Stead and declared that under Stead the PMG, whatever may be its merit, is fast ceasing to be literature. He is appalled at the shamelessness of the sensationalistic new journalism of the sort he witnessed on his tour the United States in 1886. In his account of that tour, Civilization in the United States, he observed, if one was searching for the best means to efface and kill in a whole nation the discipline of self-respect, the feeling for what is elevated, he could do no better than take the American newspapers. Next, religious criticism. Matthew Arnold had a very interesting relationship with religion, especially for living during the Victorian era. He was raised in a very liberal Anglican household, yet was heavily influenced by John Henry Newman, who was a very important figure in the church at the time. Arnold highly respected Newman, a conservative Catholic, for his spirituality. Arnold became an agnostic later in life. Although he had his own religious doubts, a source of great anxiety for him, he sought to capture the true essence of Christianity in many of his essays. His arguments for a renewed religious faith and adoption of classical and atheistic morals were representatives of the mainstream ideas of Victorian era. At this point in time, Oxford movements of evangelicals worked to republish the morals of Christianity in everyday life. Arnold supported a movement of spirituality, yet he had difficulty believing it from himself, and much of this is reflected in his works such as Last Essays on Church and Religion. His religious views were unusual for its time and caused sorrow to some of his best friends. Scholars of Arnold's work disagree on the nature of Arnold's personal religious beliefs. Under the influence of Baruch Spinoza and his father, Dr. Thomas Arnold, he rejected the supernatural elements in religion, even while retaining a fascination for church rituals. In the preface to God and the Bible, written in 1875, Arnold recounts a powerful sermon he attended discussing the salvation by Jesus Christ. He writes, "Never let us deny to this story power and pathos or treat with hostility ideas which have entered so deep into the life of Christendom. But the story is not true. It is really happened." He continues to express his concern with biblical truth, explaining that the personage of Christian heaven and their conversation are no more matter of fact than the personage of the Greek Olympias and their conversation. He also wrote, "In literature and dogma, the word God is used in most cases as by no means a term of science or exact knowledge, but a term of poetry and eloquence, a term thrown out, so to speak, as a not fully grasped object of the speaker's consciousness, a literary term in short, and mankind mean different things by it as their consciousness differs." He defined religion as morality touched with emotion. However, he also wrote in the same book, to pass from a Christianity relying on its miracles to a Christianity relying on its natural truth is a great change. It can only be brought about by those whose attachment to Christianity is such that they cannot part with it, and yet cannot but deal with it sincerely. Arnold's death. Arnold died suddenly in 1888 of heart failure whilst running to meet a train that would have taken him to the Liverpool landing stage to see his daughter, who was visiting from the United States, where she had moved after marrying American. He was survived by his wife, who died in June 901. Thank you. Next video we will read about the Arnold poem Dover Beach.